We're going to start this assignment out by typing your name into cell A1. Each of the rows has 1, 2, 3, 4 numbered going down there, A, B, C across the top. Once it gets to Z, it doubles up the letters, and it's A, B out to AZ, then BA, etc. When you're selecting one of these boxes in here, these cells, each one has a cell reference number. So this is in column D, row 5. Up here on the top left, you can see that you are in the name box under D5. I'm in cell A1, I have my name, and if I were to type anything in next to that value, my name would actually disappear in the column because it's not wide enough. What you want to do then is to widen up your column. You can do that a couple different ways. Move your cursor with your mouse between the A and the B. It's going to turn to a double-sided arrow, then double-click. It'll automatically lengthen the column width to the longest text to the column to the left of that value. Or you can just take your mouse, hold down the left key, drag and drop it to however wide you want your column length to be. We're going to take each problem and then any output that you get put in order underneath your name. And the directions actually will have you do problems 1 through 7 on one sheet. Down here at the bottom, sheet 1, and then type in problems 1 through 7. Select this little new sheet option, double click, type in problems 8 through 11, and one more sheet, I'll call that one scratch paper. When we have anything that we're typing in new data or copying from the lab directions, we can put it into the scratch paper tab. And problems 1 through 7 tab, you would have your name at the top of the page followed by each of the 6 graphs. And then problems 8 through 11 will be 2 tables followed by some dates. The scratch paper is not graded. It's just a place for you to keep your work organized. If you had something incorrect or missing something, it's nice to have that option there for me to go and see if you get partial credit. The first problem has a data set. Let me open up the directions. It has this price data. We're going to make a histogram for it. The histogram uses the data analysis tool. So there's a couple things. First of all, we need to be able to copy this data from a PDF back into Excel. There's a couple steps for that. And then we also need to load the data analysis tool. Let me start by copying the data. So I've highlighted all of the data in the table, and I'm going to do Control-C for copy. That's a quick copy. Then I'm going to go back to my blank Excel file. I don't want to enter my name. I'm going to go to my scratch paper here, anywhere on here. I'm going to not do a paste, not right away at least. I want to do a paste special. So I'm going to right-click into a blank cell, select the paste special, and instead of Unicode text, I'm just going to select text, then say OK. That'll paste it down one column instead of across a row. It makes it a lot easier to work with that data. We're going to now install the data analysis tool. If you're up here on the data tab, you may already see it, but over here on the right hand side, you'll see something called data analysis if you have it actually installed. To install it, we're going to go to File, go down to Options, select Add-ins, select Analysis Toolpack, then select Go, then check off Analysis Toolpack and Analysis Toolpack VBA. You may not have the VBA, that's okay. Just make sure you have the Analysis Toolpack checked off. Select OK. Up here now, I have this data analysis button. The next piece that we're going to put in, we're going to call it the bin, and that's the word that Excel uses on the number line on your histogram where you want your cutoff points for each of the bars. And in our data here for prices, I actually gave this to you already, but if you had to come up with class boundaries like the textbook asked you to do, these would be the endpoints to the class boundaries. We're going to type in the word bin, and from 19.5 down to 59.5. And that would give us bars that are going to end at the 19, 29, 39, 49, 59 mark. When you're in Excel and you have a sequence that follows a pattern, these are all going by units of 10. I can type in the first two numbers of that sequence and then highlight both of those values with my mouse. Move to the bottom right-hand corner of a box. That's a copy-paste feature. You have to do two in a row, where if you just had one in the row, it only would copy the one number. But Excel will know that it's counting by tens here. I can drag and drop it down. Notice it's starting to count for me. And I wanted to go to 59.5. This is really useful, for instance, if I wanted to count from 1 through 30 or something of that sort. I can just put 1, 2, copy those, paste them down, right? Drag and drop, and it'll automatically autofill those values. And the reason we're doing this is so everybody has the same cutoff points on their histogram, same width to each of their bars. The next thing we're going to go to is this data analysis tool. It's alphabetical. I'm going to go down to histogram, click OK. Input range, notice my cursor is blinking in this little text box here. I'm going to move over to the word price, hold my mouse, left mouse button down all the way down to the very last data point, let go, and that autofills up in here from cell A1 to cell A46. Bin range, I want to select the box inside here. I'm going to scroll back up, select the word bin down to the last number. And I consistently start in row 1, including the labels on both of these. So I want to make sure I check the box that says labels. Be very careful with that. If I started my selection at A2 here and went down, the number 10 would be the label, and it would not include it in my data analysis. Output range or new worksheet, either one is fine. If you do a new worksheet, apply it, it's going to put a new worksheet down here. I want it to stay in the scratch paper, so I'm going to select the little circle next to output range. Now be careful because input range is still highlighted up here. I don't want to wipe it out. So I'm going to move my cursor down into this box before I do anything else. It's one cell reference number where you want the top left-hand corner of your table and graph to appear. So I'm going to go ahead and just select a cell with my mouse, E2, or I could have typed in E2 right here. And the two that we want is cumulative percentage and chart output. Select OK. All right, we have a table that should be copied over to your problem 1 through 7 below your name. And then we have a graph, but it's not quite done. This graph, I'm going to just grab an edge. See these little circles on around the graph itself. When you've selected the graph, the circles will appear. You can take and drag them and it will move the size of that graph. In a histogram, your bars should be touching each other. The default in Excel data analysis tool does not have them touching. You want those to touch, so what I'm going to do, right on top of one of the bars, right on the blue bar, I'm going to right click on the blue bar, select Format Data Series. Over here on the right, I'm going to slide that gap width to 0%, and that slid my bars together over here. Be a little fancier with lines around them, different colors. I'm not going to worry about that right now. We're just going to leave it as it is. I want both of these just above that graph, the table and the graph all together. Control-C copies it. Go back here to problems 1 through 7, and then just hit Enter. It will paste it in right below your name. All right, our next one, we have a table here. This table probably won't copy very pretty over, but I'll go ahead and see how it works. I'm going through. I'm going to copy this table over to my scratch paper in Microsoft. And it doesn't matter in the scratch paper really where it lives. I'm just going to come down here to column D23, and I'm going to right click and then say Paste Special, Text. Because the words were different length, it probably won't come over very nicely. It did not. I knew it wasn't going to. So I'm going to have to repair this table. make it look just like it was in the directions. So I'm going to cut and paste these back to where they were originally. It might even be easier to just type in this values in the table. All right, repaired the table. You can even widen this if you want to see the entire label. When we make a bar graph or a pie graph, we're going to use this insert in the ribbon up in here, but you have to select your data before you begin. Unlike the histogram where we went into data analysis, then selected it, on this one, I need to select the data, make sure you don't have any blank rows or columns, go to the Insert tab, and we're going to do this one up in here. It's called a column bar chart, and I want the very first option there. Please do the 2D one. And it doesn't have all of the elements I'm asking for in the directions. One of the things that asks you to do was to relabel the graph and then add labels to the X and Y axes. Let me go back to my directions here. If I select the title up in here, double click the word frequency, it highlights it, and I can just paste that soft drink purchases right over it. There's no place for an X and Y axes. Select somewhere in the white area of the graph. There's a little plus sign that will appear. You can add chart elements this way. Over here on the right, I can add the axes titles. And there's your graph. I don't need to see the table again, but don't delete the table. Just copy that graph, go back underneath in the first tab there, under your histogram there, and I'm going to paste it in. Using that same data set right below this bar chart, we're going to do a pie graph. I'm going to select my table again. This time insert, and I'm going to go to the little pie icon, 2E, and there's some things that you were asked to do it. First of all, I don't want a legend. Instead, I'm going to put the labels in the pie wedges themselves. So I'm going to select the legend here and just select delete, and it goes away. And then up here under chart title, I'm going to add some data labels, but I don't want the numbers. So I'm going to select this little arrow next to it and do more options. That puts a little icon over here. Select this label options, and I don't want the value, but instead I want percentage and category name. And I want to title this soft drink purchases. Well, it doesn't like my pasted in, so I have to type it in. All right, we're done. And if your pie graph isn't big enough for each of the little labels, like if you make this a little smaller, sometimes your labels will pop out of the wedge, and that's okay, that's fine. But you can also just make it a little larger. You can play around with different elements, different styles up in here too, until you find one that you like as far as the aesthetics. As long as it has the labels and percents, the title, like if you wanted this one with the black background, you can still go in here and again delete any of the elements that you don't want in here. So I'm going to copy that, go back to my problems 1 through 7, and paste it in. Again, you can make these smaller or bigger as necessary. The next one is a pareto chart. A pareto chart is a bar graph that has been ordered from the most frequent to the least frequent category. So you need to make a table very similar to what we did with the soft drink table. And we're going to use job sources and frequency for the title of the headers of our categories. and we're going to want to find the most frequent job sourcing that happened. It looks like was networking. 280 people use networking. So let me just put these, how about side by side here, come down the page a little bit, make a table. Thing that we did with the bar graph before. So the main difference with the Pareto chart and just a regular bar graph, there's two things really, is that your bars always go from the most frequent down to the least frequent. And the second thing is that we usually have the bars touch one another. So it's a couple different things you can do, but if I wanted to format that data series by right-clicking on the bar again, I can change that gap width down to 0%. You don't have to have that, but that's usually a thing that you'll find within the Pareto charts. One thing you do have to do, though, is to label these. I'm going through, and if I go back here to our directions, you were asked to label the x-axis job sources, and the title of the graph was job sources of survey respondents. Somehow put that extra space before and after there. And I'm going to add in my axis titles, and we're done with that. Copy that, paste that right below my pie graph. Problem 6 is a time series graph, and we're going to again want to copy this data over. We have some years with male and female. Each gender would get its own line across. I'm going to copy it from the directions, paste it into my scratch work, and again I want to right click in there, do a paste special, and then text. That's not like it, so what can I do there? Let me undo that. Alright, it's not wanting to copy very nicely, so what I'm going to do is just quickly type this in again with the years, because we can autofill this. If I just do 1980, 1981, I have just these 2 years here. I can copy, paste it down until I get to 1997. It's important when you type in your data, of course, that these remain rows that are matched per year, that the data doesn't get organized differently. Let me go back and make this full screen. Now in this one, I don't want to at first highlight the year, because that'll give me a separate line. Instead, just highlight the two genders, male, female, then go into insert. This little jagged line graph is what we want, 2D. And there's some different elements we want. First of all, we want the year along the axes here. And to do that, I'm going to right-click on the legend. And then select data. And then on the edge here, I'm going to edit. Axes label range. Don't include the word year, because I don't want that to appear on the number line. But I'm going to take my mouse, select from 1980 to 1997, the cells I find there. And you should be able to see that autofill down on the bottom of your graph. And select OK, and then OK again. And the directions ask you to add some labels in here. Master's degrees by gender, year for the x-axis, and master's degrees on the y-axis. Add some axis titles. Alright, that's done. Go ahead and copy that graph below my Pareto chart. And let's see if this table will copy over. If I right click, paste special, text. That's not quite what I want. I'm going through, but I can do some copying and pasting here, and looks like that's inverted, right? My quality rating should be down here, my prices across the top. If I look back at the original directions, you can see what I mean. I had very good on the sides here, and numbers going across the top. So I still have them in the right order though, 42 through 0. 42 through 0, and they're good. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to right click, paste special, and under this one I'm going to hit transpose, and it will flip that around back to where I want it. Or you can just type it in, it's not too big of a table. Next we're going to make a side-by-side bar graph. So I'm going to select the data, insert, bar graph again, 2D. Here are my bars for each of my price ranges. I have the 3 categories. Because these are different colors, you want to keep the legend in. We're going to add some axes titles here. There's meal price, frequency, and there's your graph. Copy that, paste it back below our time series graph, pivot table, and this is with the Pelican data. So this is some credit card data from the textbook. It's a very large file, so you're going to want to open that Excel file separately. I have it open here already. And it should open so that your cursor is already in cell A1, so try not to move your cursor when you first open the file. You're going to go to Insert, select the Pivot Table option, and hopefully it should have automatically highlighted the data for you. So if I move this over, though, you can see there's a dashed line now going around all the data. If not, then select this box in here and manually highlight from customer all the way down to the very last age. At this point, just say OK, and you'll have some pivot table features here that we're going to drag and drop the titles to our things over on the values down below. So in the directions, it looks a little different because I'm on an older version of Microsoft Excel when I made these directions up, but that screenshot stays the same, but this one looks a little different than we used to have. So now I'm in version 2016, so what we still do have is over here on the right-hand side. And our goal, if you can kind of see where we're headed for, is that the gender goes across the top to label each of the columns coming down, and the method of payment would be our rows, the labels on the rows themselves. So if I go back to the Pelican data, gender, and we're dragging it down to the columns box, and method of payment, drag and drop to the rows, and then one more time, take method of payment, drag it, drop down to values. Make sure it says count here. If it doesn't say count, you can click on your menu in here, select value field settings, and then change it to count, and then say OK. That's problem 8. We're going to want to copy that back to our original Excel file, and I put a new tab at the top here for that to go into. And again, note that I can't read all the labels, so I need to widen up those labels so that you can read everything. Problem 9 is doing descriptive statistics on the age data. So I'm going back to our Pelican data file, select here under data. Here's my age column. Alright, we can go to our data tab, go to data analysis, and we want descriptive statistics. And our input range from the label age all the way down to the very last value that will put H1 through H101 here. And I selected the labels, so I want labels in the first row. Output range or new worksheet, either way, I'm going to go ahead and just do a new worksheet. And then I also want summary statistics. Click OK. There's my output. While it's still highlighted, I'm going to do Control C for copy. I'm going to go back below my pivot table there, Control V for paste. And you should have 100 people again in this data set, so your count should be at 100. All right, that's problem 9. Problem 10, I just asked you for some formatting. Problem 11, we're going to be calculating some dates. We're going to use some date features. So the first thing to do is to actually type in these two dates, 9/26/16. So we have from September 26/16 to December 7th, 2016. And then just type them into some blank cells. Let me split the screen here. All right, so down here, I'm going to go ahead and label these, each one problem 11A, so I can keep everything straight. Now I am in cell B29. In these directions, the date would have been in cell A30. When I say subtract A31 minus A30, that was assuming you put them in the same cells. You need to be careful what cell reference that you're in when you follow the directions using any type of function in here. 9/26/16, there's my date, and then 12/7/16. So in a blank cell, I'm going to subtract these two dates, and when I subtract the larger date, more recent date, minus the previous date, it's going to tell me how many days are between that September to December date. So there's 72 days between there. In the directions, it asks you to highlight your answers. So I'm going to go up here to this bucket and choose a color, whatever color you want. Yellow is fine. And highlight my answer for 11A. And then 11B, we're using those same two dates, but this time we're going to look at the work days between there. I'm going to start by an equals sign, and the function name is network days, so we're going to actually start typing. When I start typing net, it should autofill down below here. I'm going to double click network days, and it kind of gives you an outline of what you need here. You have your start date. I'm going to select with my mouse the start date, and then I'm going to put a comma, and then I'm going to put the end date, and I'm just going to close my parentheses. There's other things for holidays we'll work with in a moment, but right now just those two dates. And select enter, and we have 53 here. Again, highlight that answer. Now as we go through this lab, I don't want you to just type in 72 and 53, etc. You're going to have to change the cell reference numbers. And how I grade this, when I do Control tilde, it will actually show me the formulas that you have typed into those cells. So you just keep that in mind, that you do need to put the cell functions themselves to get credit for the lab. 11C. On this one there were some additional things here, so I'm going to go ahead and copy the table that are in your directions. So we have 9/26/16, and what this is giving me here is my start date. And make that column just a little bit smaller. And if I'm looking here in this particular example, it says that it'll take 50 days to complete this job. Oh, I don't know if you noticed that. When I typed in 50, for some reason it thought that was a date format. Excel will start from the year January 1st, 1900, and so 50 days past that would have been February 19th, 1900. And I don't want a date there, I want a number. It was trying to be helpful, I think, with these date formatting. I want to right-click on it, And I'm going to format cells. And instead of date, I'm going to go back to number there and click OK. And I can get rid of those decimal places if you wanted to under the number here. I don't need decimal places, back to that. Alright, so days to complete the project, maybe 50 days. I don't really need these labels, I'm putting them in just so that you can see each one. We have some holidays. We have Veterans Day. That year had a 11/11/16 Veterans Day. And then there were 2 days off for Thanksgiving on 11/24 and 11/25. And the function that we want on this one is called workday. So I start typing that in. It will autofill, double click. The start date, click on the cell where the date for September is, comma, click on the number 50. You could have also just typed in 50, but it's nice to have it in a cell so that if you change it later, it will automatically update your formula. And then a comma. Then with your mouse, I'm going to highlight all 3 holidays at once in the parenthesis and hit enter. And again, it's trying to be helpful for me. It thought I wanted a number, but actually, and this time, I wanted a date. So I want to, again, format that cell. So I'll right-click, format cells, and this time change that back to a date. Click OK. And then highlight that answer. What it's going to do then is it's saying, if I had a job that took 50 days, I'm starting on September 26th, I know there's some holidays, and this would be just work days, I would have the project done on December 8th. For part D, we're going to find the number of work days before a certain date, and the date that we're using is 12/7/16. So I'm going to type in the date 12/7/16. And what I want here is the date, like the work days would be 20 days before this. I'm going to type equal, and then my workday function, double click it. Start date is here, and then comma, and then I'm just going to minus 20. And what that's going to do is count backwards for me 20 work days and give me a date. Well, I want it to give me a date. Again, it gave me a number. I'm going to click it, format my cell, back to a date. Alright, that's my answer for there. And again, make sure you're actually putting the formula in, not just the date for my answers here. So 20 days before, if I had to have the job finished by December 7th, let's say your final exam for fall quarter is on December 7th, and you need 20 days to complete this project, you need to start it by November 9th. Right, for part E, this one we're going to take a date, and we're going to, we know it's going to take 2 years, 4 months, and 15 days from October 3rd, 2016 to complete it, rather than counting ahead on a calendar. We're going to use the function called date. And the year is what it starts out with here, starting from 2016. And again, I wanted 2 years ahead of time, so I'm going to add 2, plus 2 there. Comma, the month was October, so I'm going to put a 10 in. And then I'm talking again 4 months after that, so I'm going to add 4. And then the original date, October 3rd, would have been starting on a 3. And I have 15 days after that, so I'm going to add 15 in the parenthesis. And that would be February 18th, 2019. And highlight your answer. All right, in part F, we're going to find out how many days old you are. So what you want to do is type in your birthday, and I'm going to make up a day. Let's say that I was born February 14th in the year, let's do something fairly recent, 2010. And pretty sure none of you are 7 years old. So this is not your actual birthday. So type in your birthday. And what we're going to do then is we're going to type in today function. So equals today. It starts a parenthesis, and I just want to end the parenthesis right away. And then I'm going to subtract, so minus sign, and click on your birthday. And what it does is again, it's going backwards, it's giving me a date, and I don't want the date, I want how many days old I am. So I'm going to format that cell again. Format cells, and this time I'm going to go back to a number. And again, I can get rid of those decimal places. And highlight my answer while I'm at it. Alright, so for a person that was born in 2010, from today's date, they would be 2,694 days old. If I actually put my birthday in there, I'd be a lot older than that. What's nice about the today function is when I'm in here, it will update it. So if I open up this file tomorrow, it would actually say 2,695 days. And so every day it's going to add on there for you. When you are working in Excel, if I go up here and save it from this point, when the next person opens it, they're going to open it right to this view. And we don't want to open it up to problem 11. You will get automatically a point taken off for formatting. You're going to want to format this a couple of ways. First, it should be able to print without a line break right through a page. That you should be able to read all these labels. So I need to widen up some labels possibly so that I can read everything. You want to select back into cell A1 on all of your pieces, all of your worksheets up in here, so that the next person that opens it always opens to the top of each sheet. And then back to problem 1 through 7 again. If I go all the way back up to the top, I have to move over a little bit here to see my name. I want you to actually select your name before you hit any save options. And the print is the same way. So if I was to actually look at a print preview of this document, note right in here, I have a pie graph that's split in half. This histogram actually is coming up on another page as well. So there's a lot of different breaks in this document that would not be professional if I was to actually print this document. And you can actually see all of them from here. I can print the entire workbook. If I go down a couple more pages, so there's some obvious breaks in here that I want to get rid of. And I would just hit escape, go back to my original view. To actually move these line breaks around, there's a couple different ways to do it, but I find that the easiest way would be to go into view. From normal, change it to page break preview. And these little dashed lines, you can drag and drop to where you want them to be. You can also, if you want to, just move a graph around. So it depends on where you're at. So like if I wanted to move that down here and move that one over there. Actually, I should probably get rid of that date. I forgot I put that on there. Then I have these hard lines that are not going to be right through a graph. Go back to my name here. I'm going to change it back to normal view. So next time I go into my preview, page break preview, now I don't have any line breaks right through a graph. And you can see on my problems 8 through 11. On this one again, I want to go ahead and go to page break preview. Down at the bottom of here, I have this little tiny break in here. I'm going to get rid of, drag into one page. I don't really care what the scratch paper looks like, but if you were doing a report, you'd want to do that for all the pages, one at a time. Once you're done with all the formatting, make sure you go back to your name and then save it. So that next time we open it, it opens up right to your name. It's also important if you were to email this to somebody and they were right away to do a quick print and you didn't have it formatted correctly, they're going to waste a lot of paper and time. So it's important that all Excel workbooks get formatted correctly. So you should have one file. Make sure you label it and upload it to your assignments Dropbox.